I was really, really concentrating hard on that mandala and that sculpture. And I had been working on it intensely for about 3 months, so that's a lot of meditation on a single idea. And I was standing in my living room, and then I had this very strange experience. I can't explain this properly because there's no way of really describing it, but I'll do my best. So, in those Renaissance paintings, sometimes you see, well, first of all, you see great cloud, great sunny skies with massive, stupendous, impressive billows of clouds, and then light shining through, the sunlight shining through in streams. Sometimes that's captured very beautifully by, especially English, later artists, usually that are later than the Renaissance, but you see it in Renaissance paintings too. And you also see in Renaissance paintings, especially in the earlier phase of the Renaissance, the sky opening up and God sort of peering forth through the clouds. And that's exactly what seemed to happen to me, is that I had this sense. It was like a vision, although I was still in my living room and knew it, but inside the theater of my imagination, I could feel the sky opening up. Now, it wasn't the sky, it was, I would say, the only way I can really think about it is that it was something like another dimension. And then I could feel this force descend upon me, which I think was something that, would have been considered classically something like the Holy Ghost, I suppose. And it filled me with this intense sense of paradisal, I don't know how to say it. Well, it was like being in heaven for some brief period of time, and I could feel myself transformed, transmuted as a consequence of this experience, and it was as if I was in the presence of something that was living, and I suppose that was an experience of God, if you want to put it that way. That's certainly what it seemed like, and I felt that I could live that way. I could live transfigured like that permanently if I desired it, and I thought, my God, I wouldn't be able to walk down the street in this sort of elevated state, let's say. I don't know how I would act. I don't know how I would interact with people. I don't know how people would interact with me. I just don't think that I could do it. And then I felt that whatever had descended, it seemed that as if it was sorrowful, and it departed from me slowly, and with no punitive intent, and I wouldn't say with any dissatisfaction. It was as if a gift had been offered that I wasn't in no position to receive. And I talked to my wife soon afterwards. I shook physically for about half an hour after that experience, like I was shaking, like you shake after a car accident, if you've ever been in a car accident, and my pupils were completely dilated. And I had a couple of experiences like that, like echoes of it a couple of times after that. And so anyways, that was a very, very powerful experience. I've certainly never forgotten that. And well, I don't know what to think about that. I mean, God only knows what the world is really like, that's for sure. And I've had a variety of very strange experiences that have convinced me that we know very little about anything. So, so you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now, you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief, and I don't understand it. Because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch That's Jungian synchronicity. Yeah. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. We have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to... And that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believed that history and let's say the narrative meet, let's
both,
say.
I think you... Because when you believe that, you buy both those stories. You believe that the narrative and the objective can actually touch. People have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists. That's one answer. No, but I'm terrified he might exist. That would be a truthful answer to some degree. Or that I act as if God exists, which I think is... I do my best to do that, but then there's a real stumbling block there, because there's no limit to what would happen if you acted like God existed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I believe that acting that out fully, maybe it's not reasonable to say to believers, you aren't sufficiently transformed for me to believe that you believe in God, or that you believe the story that you're telling me. You're not the way you live isn't sufficient testament to the truth. And people would certainly say that, let's say, about the Catholic Church, or at least the way that it's been portrayed, is that with all the sexual corruption, for example, it's like, really, you believe that the Son of God, that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and yet you act that way, and I'm supposed to buy your belief. And it seems to me that the church is actually quite guilty on that account, because the attempts to clean up the mess have been rather half-hearted in my estimation. Yeah. And so I don't think Christians don't manifest this, and I'm including myself, I suppose, in that description, perhaps don't manifest the transformation of attitude that enables the outside observer to easily conclude that they believe.
Yeah.